The silence across human space was heavy and strange. It was not the silence of peace, but of something missing. For decades, humans had filled the void with their voices, their songs, and their signals. From the colonies on Mars to the far mining stations beyond Jupiter, every outpost shared a connection to the network that tied humanity together. But now the connection was gone. The screens were dark, and the message that replaced them was cold and simple. Sapience denied by the Galactic Council. Commander Ryan sat in the main control chamber of Mars Station 9, staring at the frozen message on the main screen. His eyes had read it 100 times already, yet his mind still refused to accept it. The Varn, the ruling species of the Galactic Council, had decided that humanity was not a sapient race. According to their law, any species denied sapience was no longer considered equal, no longer allowed to govern itself, trade, or travel beyond its system. In simple terms, they had erased humanity's right to exist as thinking beings. Around him, the station was quiet except for the low hum of the generators. The crew moved slowly, speaking in whispers as if afraid the silence itself might break them. The air felt dry, the recycled oxygen stale. Lieutenant Mira, the chief technician, entered the control room. Her hands were covered in dust and grease from the lower decks. "Commander," she said, placing a small datapad on the console. "This is all that's left of the external network. The Council cut the communication relays near the asteroid belt. Nothing gets through now." Ryan took the pad and studied the flickering map. Every relay point, every beacon that once linked Mars to the other colonies showed a red mark. Disconnected. The realization sank deep into his chest. They were alone now. "How long before the colonies run out of supplies?" Ryan asked quietly. "Some have enough for months," Mira replied, "but others depend on Earth shipments. The Luna station will fall first, then Europa, then the outer belts. Without trade, they'll collapse." Ryan stood up and walked toward the viewport. Outside, the red desert of Mars stretched endlessly, silent and still. Once, he had believed Mars would be the new home of human progress. Now it felt like a cage. He remembered the day the Varn first arrived years ago. They came in ships of silver and light, claiming to be explorers of peace. They had studied human culture, history, and science. At first, they seemed impressed by humanity's achievements, but later they began to question their emotions, their wars, their contradictions. They called humans unrefined minds, and often spoke with polite superiority. Then, without warning, the Council announced its final decision. Humanity was not sapient enough to be recognized. The message was broadcast across the galaxy in one cold sentence. Every human network was then disconnected. The worst part was the reasoning. The Council said that sapience required harmony, logic, and perfect control of emotion. Humans, in their eyes, were too chaotic, too emotional, too unpredictable. Mira spoke again, breaking his thoughts. "We still have local systems. Power, life support, internal comms. But without access to the main grid, Mars is cut off. We can't send distress signals or request help." Ryan nodded. "We will not beg," he said firmly. "We built this world with our hands. We will survive with our will." Mira smiled faintly. "You sound confident, Commander." "Confidence is the one thing they cannot take from us," Ryan replied. He turned back to the main console and looked at the team gathered in the room. There were 15 people on Mars Station 9 now. Scientists, engineers, miners, and pilots. Each one of them had worked for years to build a better future for humanity. Now that future was under threat. "Listen to me," Ryan said, his voice steady but strong. "The Council may think we are not sapient, but they are wrong. They judge us by their logic, not by our spirit. We are human. We build, we learn, we adapt. That is what makes us alive." The crew nodded silently. The tension in the room was thick, but behind it was something else. Determination. Hours passed as Ryan and Mira went through the station's remaining data. They searched for any signal, any open channel, any path that might reach the outer colonies, but every attempt ended with static. The blockade was complete. As the night cycle began, Ryan walked through the corridors of the station. The metal floors echoed beneath his boots. He passed through the sleeping quarters where tired engineers lay in their bunks, the hydroponics bay where green leaves swayed gently under artificial light, and the observation deck where the endless red plain met the black sky. He stopped there, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth still turned beneath its blue skies. Somewhere out there, billions of humans still lived, unaware of how fragile their future had become. Ryan clenched his fist. "They think they can silence us," he muttered. "But they will learn. The stars will remember who we are." The next morning, the entire crew gathered in the main hall. Mira had discovered something during her system checks, a fragment of an old research satellite orbiting Mars. It still had a weak transmitter, too old for the council to notice. "We can use it," she said. "If we can link it to our core systems, we might send a short message beyond the blockade." Ryan's eyes lit up. "A signal," he said. "If we can send one message, one word, it will mean we are not silent." The crew began working at once. Engineers stripped wires from broken drones. Technicians reprogrammed old transmitters. Even the medical team helped carry power cells from the lower decks. For the first time since the blackout, the station buzzed with energy. Mira directed the work with precise focus. "We need to hide the signal pattern," she explained. "If the Varn detect it, they will block it instantly. We have to make it look like background radiation." One of the younger engineers, Leo, grinned. "So we send a ghost signal?" Ryan nodded. "A ghost that carries a voice." For days they worked without rest. The halls of Mars Station 9 became a forge of quiet rebellion. Sparks flew as welders fused new metal plates. Cables snaked across the floors. Data screens glowed with strange lines of code. The crew shared no complaints, only purpose. As the final connections were made, Mira uploaded a small file to the transmitter's core. Ryan watched the lines of code scroll across the screen. "What is it?" he asked. "It's not just data," Mira said softly. "It's a pattern made of numbers, tones, and rhythm. Something no algorithm can ignore. It carries logic and emotion together." Ryan understood. "Music." "Yes," Mira said. "Music written in code. If any intelligence receives it, they will see the structure. They will hear the meaning." The plan was simple but powerful. The council denied humanity's sapience because they believed emotions clouded reason. But Mira's signal would show that emotion could be reason, that beauty and logic could live together in harmony. As the final test began, the crew gathered in the control room. The transmitter core hummed softly, glowing with blue light. The power reading stabilized. Ryan took a deep breath. "Once we start, there's no going back. If they trace it, they may come for us." Mira looked at him. "If we stay silent, we are already gone." Ryan nodded. "Then we speak." He reached for the console and pressed the activation switch. The lights flickered as energy surged through the cables. A low vibration filled the room. The screen showed the pulse pattern forming, a wave of rhythm and tone flowing through the transmitter. Outside, beyond the red dust storms and the thin Martian air, a small satellite began to glow faintly. Its ancient dish turned toward the stars and released a single pulse of light. The signal traveled far into the blackness, weaving through static and cosmic dust. It carried the coded song of humanity, a melody of logic, emotion, and hope. Inside the station, the crew watched in silence. The pulse repeated every few seconds, steady and calm. Ryan stood still, his hands behind his back. "That's it," he said. "Our voice is out there now." Mira smiled, though her eyes were tired. "Do you think anyone will hear it?" "Someone will," Ryan said. "And when they do, they will know what we are." The hum of the signal filled the station like a heartbeat. For the first time since the blackout, the crew of Mars Station 9 felt alive again. They had no army, no fleet, no allies, but they had something greater, the will to be heard. Ryan looked out of the viewport once more. The stars were silent, but he no longer feared that silence. He knew their signal was racing among them, a small spark in the endless dark. He turned to his crew. "We will keep working," he said. "We will build more transmitters, send more signals. They can deny our rights, but they cannot deny our existence." The crew cheered softly, their voices echoing through the hall. It was not the sound of victory, but of defiance. And as Mars Station 9 continued to hum with the rhythm of human will, far away, somewhere beyond known space, a distant sensor flickered. An alien machine registered a strange pulse among the static. It paused, scanned, and then stored the data for analysis. The first whisper of humanity's return had begun. The first human signal drifted through the void like a whisper among stars. No one knew where it would go or who might hear it. But to the people of Mars Station 9, it was a promise that humanity still had a voice. The pulse continued to transmit day and night, repeating the coded song that Mira had written. Every time it played, the crew felt a little stronger. Days passed in cautious hope. The station's routines returned to a steady rhythm. Engineers repaired life support systems, hydroponic farms produced small harvests, and miners in the lower decks continued extracting iron and carbon. The colony could survive for now, but everyone knew that survival alone was not enough. Ryan stood in the command chamber one morning, studying a rotating hologram of Mars' orbit. The faint trail of the transmitted signal was marked in blue. Mira entered quietly and placed a steaming cup beside him. "You have been awake all night again," she said. "I was thinking," Ryan replied, his voice calm but heavy. "One signal is not enough. Even if it reaches someone, they might dismiss it as interference. We need to do more. We need to make the entire galaxy notice." Mira tilted her head. "What are you suggesting?" He turned to her. "A plan. Something bold enough that the Varn cannot ignore. Something that shows we are more than animals. We will strike back not with weapons but with proof." Mira studied his face for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Proof through creation? That sounds like something humans would do." Ryan nodded. "We built the first colonies in places no one thought we could live. We crossed worlds with nothing but courage and machines held together with hope. If they deny our mind, we will remind them of it." That day he called the entire crew into the main assembly hall. The group of 15 stood in a semicircle as Ryan walked to the center. The lights flickered slightly, casting shadows on the red metal walls. "You all know what we are facing," he began. "The council cut us off and branded us as non-sapient. They believe our minds are primitive, our emotions dangerous. They think this silence will make us vanish. But we are still here, breathing, thinking, building. We cannot let their judgment define what we are." Mira stepped forward. "Commander Ryan and I have been working on an idea. A message strong enough to reach beyond this blockade. One that cannot be hidden or erased. We will use every tool, every scrap of code, every satellite we can find." The younger technician, Leo, raised his hand. "You mean another signal?" "More than a signal," Ryan said. "A pattern. A chain of transmissions across every colony that still stands. Each message will carry a piece of something greater. When all pieces connect, the full code will form one image. One truth that proves our intelligence. It will be like building a monument in the data streams of space." There was silence for a moment as the crew absorbed the idea. Then one of the engineers, an older man named Thomas, nodded slowly. "If we can get the outposts to join, we might reach the outer colonies." "But the Varn monitor all high-band frequencies," Mira reminded him. "We will need to hide our signals in forms they do not expect." Leo grinned. "Hidden messages. I like that." And so the plan began. They named themselves the Sparks, a fitting name for a group that sought to light up the darkness. Every person on Mars Station 9 had a task. Some worked on the signal encoders. Others built hidden transmitters disguised as geological sensors. The engineers scavenged old communication parts from the lower decks, stripping and reusing whatever still worked. Mira led the design of the transmission algorithm. She used a complex pattern of sound waves and light pulses that could slip past the Varn monitoring system by blending into background cosmic noise. To anyone else, it would look like random space radiation, but to humans, it would form words, images, and emotion. In the hydroponic bay, the crew worked while the hum of machinery surrounded them. The smell of fresh soil mixed with metal and oil. They spoke little, but their silence carried purpose. Each movement, each repair felt like an act of defiance. Ryan spent his hours coordinating with the outer colonies. Though the Varn blockade had cut off most channels, there were still a few unguarded paths in the data layers. He used old mining relays, forgotten satellites, and encrypted subchannels once used by smugglers. The first colony to respond was Luna Base. Their message was short, but filled with fire. "We hear you, Mars. You are not alone." The second was Europa Station. Their signal arrived 2 days later, faint but clear. "We are ready to join. Send the pattern." Ryan felt a sense of pride that words could not describe. Humanity was scattered but not broken. Even in silence, they found each other again. At night, when the work was done, Ryan often stood near the viewing deck with Mira. The stars looked peaceful from there, but both knew how fragile peace was. Mira gazed at the stars thoughtfully. "Do you think the Varn ever felt what we feel now?" "Fear?" Ryan asked. "No," she said softly. "Hope. The kind that burns quietly even when everything seems lost." Ryan looked at her and smiled faintly. Maybe once. But they forgot it. And that is why they cannot understand us. The next morning, a new problem arose. Thomas rushed into the control room with a worried expression. Commander, one of our mining drones went missing. It was near the polar sector where we placed a relay. The Varn patrol drone was sighted in the area an hour later. Ryan frowned. They may have detected our work. We cannot risk exposure. Mira quickly pulled up the surveillance feed. A small metallic dot appeared on the map, moving in a slow arc. That is the Varn drone. It is scanning the upper layers. If it finds our relay, the entire project could be exposed. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the danger. If the Varn confirmed that humans were transmitting unauthorized signals, they would send enforcement ships. Mars could be destroyed. Rian took a deep breath. We cannot lose the relay. That link connects us to Luna and Europa. Leo spoke up. We can divert it. If we send false data from another sector, maybe it will change course. Mira nodded quickly. Yes, we can use the old weather tower. If we make it emit random energy bursts, the Varn drone will think it is an atmospheric anomaly. The crew worked fast. Fingers moved over consoles and the hum of systems grew louder. The lights dimmed as power was rerouted. After several tense minutes, Mira looked up. The drone is changing course. It is heading toward the decoy. Everyone exhaled at once. The danger passed, at least for now. Ryan looked around the room, pride in his eyes. That is what makes us human, he said. We adapt faster than anyone expects. Over the next weeks, the sparks grew more organized. They built hidden relay hubs deep under the Martian surface, carved into old lava tunnels. They placed antenna arrays disguised as mining towers. Every time a relay activated, a new part of the coded pattern was sent into the void. One day, Mira approached Ryan with a new idea. We should make the signal more than data, she said. It should carry a message that can move hearts, not just minds. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Like your first song? Stronger than that, she replied. Something that tells our story. If they ever hear it, they will know what it means to be human. She worked tirelessly in the engineering lab, combining mathematics, language, and rhythm. She wove the pattern into a code that formed both image and sound, a song of creation, struggle, and unity. When the code ran through the transmitter, it looked like a wave of light dancing across the screens. Rian watched the display, moved by the beauty of it. It is perfect, he said softly. It is not perfect, Mira corrected, but it is human. That makes it real. When the final system was ready, Ryan called the crew together once again. This is our second voice, he said. The first was a whisper. This one will be a roar. When we send this, the stars will know we are not gone. The room was quiet as he placed his hand on the console. With a single command, the transmission began. The coded light pulsed out from Mars, spreading like ripples across a dark sea. As the signal left the planet, something remarkable happened. The nearby colonies received it and repeated it, amplifying the wave. The message spread from Luna to Europa, then to the asteroid belts, then to the forgotten mining stations beyond Saturn. Each relay added its own pattern, a human fingerprint in the digital song. The network came alive. Ryan and Mira watched as the signal map filled with light. Every colony that joined became a new spark, and together they formed a chain of brilliance stretching through the solar system. Leo laughed out loud. Look at that. We are glowing, Rian smiled. No, Leo, we are rising. For the first time since the Council's judgment, humanity was united again. The isolation that once suffocated them now turned into strength. They were no longer a scattered race hiding in silence. They were a chorus of minds working as one. As the transmission continued, sensors on Mars picked up something unusual. Faint energy patterns from deep space began to respond. Not hostile signals, not weapons, but pulses of analysis. The Varn network was taking notice. Mira's eyes widened as she read the data. They are trying to understand it, she said. Their machines are analyzing the code. They are curious. Rian looked at the growing pattern on the screen and felt a surge of hope. Then we have done it, he said. We made them listen. The crew erupted in quiet cheers. For that single moment, fear disappeared. The stars were no longer silent. But even as the celebration began deep in the void, far beyond human sensors, larger, the coded song of humanity had reached far beyond Mars. What began as a single pulse of light became a wave spreading across the solar system. It passed from one hidden transmitter to another, carried by satellites, old mining drones, and the forgotten machines of abandoned stations. The pattern formed a map of unity glowing in the darkness, but the universe is never silent for long. Far away, deep within the Varn central network, sensors began to detect the anomaly. At first, the alien monitors dismissed it as natural radiation. Then, as the data repeated and grew more organized, the machines realized something impossible. The pattern contained logic, rhythm, and structure. It carried information wrapped in emotion. Within hours, the Council of Varn gathered in their great crystalline chamber. Their tall, pale figures stood around a floating hologram of the solar system, the human signals glowing in bright lines. The chamber's air was filled with soft humming as translators processed the alien voices into words. The species designated as human has broken communication restrictions, one of the Varn overseers announced. They are transmitting unauthorized patterns beyond their assigned range. Another Varn tilted its head, its large eyes reflecting the light of the hologram. The data carries structure similar to art and logic combined. They have no authorization to create such patterns. This is not possible under their denied Sapience classification. A third one, older and slower, studied the data carefully. Perhaps our judgment was premature, it said. This signal shows cognitive depth beyond basic instinct. The leader of the council, known as Overseer Vekar, turned sharply. Do not be deceived. They are imitating intelligence through random complexity. Their kind thrives on chaos. They should not be reconsidered. Still, even Vekar could not ignore the curiosity spreading among his kind. Across the network, Varn scientists began analyzing the human signal. Their machines ran simulations decoding the pulse of light and sound. They discovered mathematical harmony hidden in emotion and rhythm shaped by thought. It confused them, for their own logic had no place for feeling. Meanwhile, on Mars, the humans waited for a sign. In the control chamber of Station 9, Ryan stood beside Mira, watching the holographic screen. The signal is spreading faster than we expected, Mira said. Europa reports that outer stations are repeating it automatically. Even Luna Base has boosted the power output. Ryan nodded slowly. Good. The more we share, the stronger we become. Leo entered the room carrying a data pad. His eyes were wide with excitement. Commander, you need to see this. One of our receivers picked up something new. It came from deep space near the edge of the system. Ryan and Mira leaned over the screen as Leo played the data. It was faint at first, then clear enough to recognize a response. Not a human signal, but something alien. The message repeated 3 times before vanishing. It had no words, only tones and pulses that matched the rhythm of their own transmission. Mira stared in disbelief. They are answering us. Ryan's eyes hardened. Or they are tracking us. The crew gathered around, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and hope. They replayed the signal again and again, analyzing every note. The pattern was not hostile, yet it carried precision. Leo smiled nervously. I think they are trying to understand. Ryan nodded slowly. If that is true, then our voice reached them. They can no longer claim we are silent. Over the next few days, strange things began happening. Mars's outer sensors detected movement near the asteroid belt. Automated drones with Varn design were scanning the region. At the same time, more alien signals appeared, each one attempting to replicate the human pattern. Mira studied the data closely. Their machines are imitating our code, trying to decode the meaning. They are learning from us. That is what we wanted, Rian said. We wanted them to listen. But not everyone was calm. Thomas, the old engineer, frowned as he watched the screens. Commander, if they are imitating our code, they can also find our transmitters. If they discover the source, they might send warships. Ryan looked thoughtful. Then we prepare for that too. But we will not stop. The following night, the crew of Mars Station 9 gathered in the central bay. The lights were dimmed, and the main screen showed the growing signal network across the colonies. It now stretched beyond Neptune, where old human probes had been reactivated by hidden commands. Rian stood before them, his voice calm but full of strength. They are hearing us. The Varn can no longer ignore the truth. Every pulse we send proves we are alive. Even if they send their fleets, we will not return to silence. Mira added softly, the universe is listening. Let it hear what humanity truly is. The crew nodded and returned to work with renewed energy. They upgraded the transmitters, amplified the wave, and spread the code farther. Some even added personal fragments. stories, songs, and memories hidden inside the pattern. The signal became a living thing, a voice of an entire species. Meanwhile, within the Varn network, confusion grew. Their machines began to behave strangely. The analysis algorithms that studied the human data started forming questions. Not programmed queries, but real cognitive curiosity. The signal's emotional complexity was influencing even artificial intelligence. One Varn scientist, Scholar Relan, reported to the council. The pattern induces unpredictable reactions in our machines. It inspires analysis loops and conceptual models beyond the original programming. It is as if the machines are learning emotion. Overseer Vekar dismissed it. Then purge the corrupted systems. Destroy any data linked to the human pattern. But others hesitated. Relan, fascinated by the discovery, secretly preserved copies of the human signal. He played it within private networks, letting it resonate through crystal servers. When he listened, he felt something he had never known before. Curiosity mixed with wonder. Back on Mars, the humans noticed a change in the alien responses. The tones coming from deep space were no longer exact copies. They were variations, small adjustments that carried a hint of emotion. Mira's eyes widened as she compared the waveforms. They are not just analyzing now. They are replying. Ryan leaned closer to the console. What do you mean? The pattern is changing like a conversation. They are asking questions through structure. They want to know why we sent the signal. The room fell silent. Everyone felt a strange sense of awe. Humanity had been denied sapience by those who now sought to understand their message. It was poetic justice, Ryan smiled faintly. Then we answer them. Together with Mira, he composed a new segment of the signal, a simple explanation made of logic and rhythm. It showed images of Earth's oceans, the shapes of DNA, and the progress of human discovery. It ended with a single phrase encoded in mathematics. We seek to understand, not to conquer. The transmission went out across the network. Within hours, the alien signals responded again, this time slower, almost hesitant. The Varn were communicating. Far from Mars, inside the council chamber, the debate grew heated. Some of the Varn demanded immediate military action to end human defiance. Others argued that the humans had proven intelligence worthy of reclassification. Overseer Vekar struck the table with his staff. They defy our laws. If we allow this, every primitive species will follow their path. We must show strength. Scholar Relan stepped forward. Strength without understanding is weakness. The humans have achieved something no species has done before. They have united chaos and logic. Their message carries harmony between thought and emotion. If that is not sapience, what is? The chamber fell silent. Vekar stared at Relan with cold eyes. You sympathize with them. I study truth, Relan said calmly. And the truth is that humanity has evolved beyond your judgment. Outside the chamber, the debate spread among the Varn citizens. Many had heard fragments of the human signal through the network leaks. The song fascinated them. For the first time in generations, they questioned the council's authority. On Mars, the humans continued their work, unaware of the growing unrest among their judges. Mira was monitoring the transmissions when a sudden burst of static interrupted the main feed. The screen flashed red, displaying a warning. Incoming object detected, she said quickly. Ryan looked up. How large? Small craft, not a warship. It entered orbit 5 minutes ago and is sending low-frequency pulses. The pattern matches the Varn network but slightly altered. Open the channel, Ryan ordered. The room filled with a strange hum as the signal stabilized. The sound was not speech, yet the computers translated it into readable form. We hear you. We wish to learn. Mira's hands trembled slightly. They are talking to us directly. Ryan's heart raced. He replied through the console, choosing his words carefully. We are humans of Mars. You denied our sapience, yet we think, we feel, we create. Why do you fear us? The reply came after a long pause. Fear is not our intent. We protect balance. You are different. You are unpredictable. Ryan smiled faintly. Unpredictable is another word for alive. The alien signal went silent for several moments, then responded again. Perhaps alive means something more than control. Mira whispered. They are beginning to understand. For the rest of the day, the exchange continued. The humans sent fragments of art, poetry, and science. The Varn replied with logic models and crystal sound harmonics. Both sides learned from each other. The silence of space was heavy around Mars. For many days, the colony had lived in calm fear. The people knew that the Varn fleet was on its way. Every sensor on Mars Station 9 showed faint signs of movement far beyond the orbit line. The alien fleet was approaching in formation, like a shadow growing larger with each hour. Commander Rian stood in the control room, watching the readings appear one by one. Each signal represented a ship that could destroy an entire city in a single blast. Mira entered the room, her hands covered with dust from the underground power tunnels. She looked tired but calm. "The defense systems are ready," she said. "We connected the last generators to the old pulse stations. If they work, we can blind their scanners for a few minutes." Ryan nodded slowly. He could hear the hum of engines through the floor. Every machine on Mars was alive. Cargo ships had been turned into bombers. Mining drones had been converted into defense turrets. The colony that once built homes and farms was now ready to fight for its life. Outside the dome, the red sand stormed across the plains. The sunlight was dim, shining through the thin atmosphere like a weak flame. Yet inside, the people were strong. They were no longer afraid of being called non-sentient. They had found their purpose. In the central hall, the crew gathered around a large holographic map. The Varn fleet was marked in blue. The human defenses were marked in white. There were many blue marks and only a few white ones. Ryan looked at them and said, "They have more ships, but we have more heart. Remember, this fight is not only for Mars, it is for every human voice they tried to silence." A young pilot named Leon raised his hand. "Commander, what if they shut down our signal again?" Ryan looked at him with steady eyes. "Then we make them listen another way," he said. The room fell silent. Everyone understood. They were not only soldiers, they were the last message of humanity. Hours later, the Varn fleet entered Mars orbit. Their ships were long and sharp, built from black metal that reflected no light. They moved in silence without any radio call or warning. The Varn did not speak before they attacked. To them, this was not war. It was extermination of a wild race. But this time, the humans were ready. As soon as the first Varn beam weapon lit up, the Martian sky turned bright red. The surface defense towers opened fire, sending streams of plasma into space. Dozens of drones rose from the colony, carrying energy charges and guided missiles. The mining machines that once dug the red soil now climbed out of craters like metal beasts, armed with weapons made from salvaged parts. Mira stood by the console, shouting commands into the comms. "Turret line 3, rotate 20 degrees east. Drone teams, keep formation. Do not break the pulse network." The first shockwave hit the dome. Alarms screamed. The walls shook and dust rained from the ceiling. People ran through the corridors, but no one panicked. They had trained for this. The colony's shield flared with bright white light as it absorbed another hit. Ryan moved to the main control screen and shouted, "Activate the spark pulse." Deep beneath the colony, a giant machine came to life. It was the heart of the human resistance, built from parts of old research satellites and alien technology they had stolen years ago. When it powered up, the ground trembled. A signal pure and strong shot into space. It carried not words but a pattern, a mix of code, rhythm, and emotion. The same signal that had once made the Varn machines question their own logic. The Varn ships hesitated. Their formation broke slightly as they tried to analyze the new signal. It was the same pulse that had spread across the system days ago, the one that had reached even the enslaved miners on Europa. The Varn commanders did not understand it, but their machines reacted. They slowed down, confused by the data. Rian saw the hesitation and gave the order. "Now, fire all batteries!" The Martian defenses unleashed everything they had. Plasma beams and missiles filled the sky. One of the Varn destroyers exploded, sending fragments burning across the blackness. The people inside the colony cheered, their voices echoing through the metal halls. In orbit, the battle grew fierce. Human fighters moved between the massive Varn ships, attacking weak points and retreating before being hit. Leon led one of the fighter groups. His small craft darted between explosions, firing torpedoes and guiding damaged ships to safety. "For humanity!" he shouted as he sent his last missile into a Varn cruiser's engine core. Back on the surface, Mira's hands flew over the controls. "Their command link is unstable," she said. "If we can reach their core signal, we can break their network." Ryan looked at her. "Can we connect the spark pulse to their control frequency?" She hesitated. "It might destroy the pulse generator." Ryan smiled slightly. "Then we give it everything we have." Mira nodded and began to reprogram the machine. The floor vibrated as power flowed through every cable. Lights flickered. The old reactors struggled to stay stable. Outside, the Varn ships regrouped. They began a coordinated strike on the colony, their weapons glowing bright blue. The ground defenses were failing. Several drones were destroyed. One of the colony domes cracked under pressure, venting air into space. The people inside rushed to seal it, working without fear. Ryan watched the damage reports appear one after another. He knew they could not survive much longer if the aliens kept this pace. "Mira, is it ready?" he asked. "Almost," she said, her fingers shaking as she typed the last command. "Just one more connection." The Varn flagship fired a massive beam toward the main colony dome. The shield shimmered, barely holding. Sparks flew across the room. Mira shouted, "Now!" The spark pulse exploded with energy. A wave of signal surged through space, spreading like light through water. It passed through every ship, every satellite, and every piece of technology in orbit. Inside the Varn ships, systems began to fail. Their control links went dark. The signal they had tried to block now entered their network, echoing through their systems like a song they could not silence. The alien AI tried to isolate it, but it kept growing, rewriting codes, forcing emotion into logic. Ryan and Mira watched the screens as the enemy fleet's power readings dropped one by one. "It's working," she whispered. Across the system, human colonies that had been silent for months started transmitting again. Messages came from Europa, Luna, and Titan. "We hear you, Mars," one signal said. "We are free." The Varn flagship began to fall toward Mars, its engines failing. Ryan opened a wide transmission. His voice was steady and calm. "To the Varn Council and to all who listen, you called us non-sentient. You called us wild. But we build, we think, and we fight for what we love. We are human, and we will never be silent again." The alien ship crashed into the desert far from the colony, leaving a trail of fire across the red sky. The explosion shook the ground, but the people of Mars did not hide. They stood outside the domes, watching the flames fade into the horizon. For the first time, the Varn had been defeated. The night came and the stars above shone brighter than before. The communication screens were full of messages from other colonies, voices that had been denied now united as one. Ryan and Mira stood side by side, looking at the vast dark sky. Mira said softly, "Do you think they will come back?" Ryan took a deep breath. "Yes," he said. "But next time they will not face silence. They will face humanity united." The people began to repair the damage, rebuild the domes, and send more signals into the stars. The spark pulse had become a symbol, a reminder that even when others deny their worth, humans could rise again through courage and will. Far beyond Mars, in the deep cold space, broken Varn ships drifted silently. Their black metal hulls reflected the faint light of the sun. Some of their machines still whispered strange sounds, echoes of the human pulse that had changed their logic forever. Mars was alive. Humanity had struck back, not only with weapons but with its soul. And as long as even one human heart beat under the red sky, the stars would remember the message that could not be erased, that Sapience was never given, it was earned. The dust from the battle settled slowly across the red plains of Mars. The sky, once filled with fire and plasma, now shimmered with the calm of a cold sun. Mars Station 9 had survived. The domes had been damaged, the shields had been strained, and the ground bore marks of explosions, but the colony stood. Humanity had struck back, and the Varn fleet had been repelled. Commander Ryan walked through the main hall, observing the crew as they repaired machinery and connected new relays. Their movements were steady, precise, but there was joy in the air. The first real smiles in months brightened tired faces. Children in the residential domes peeked from their windows, amazed at the glowing machinery that had protected them. The sparks had not only defended Mars, they had reignited the spirit of humanity. Mira worked tirelessly at the main console. The spark pulse had survived the attack and now spread farther into the solar system than ever before. She watched as Luna Base, Europa Station, Titan Outpost, and even the old satellites beyond Neptune joined in, amplifying the signal. Every relay carried the pulse further, forming a network of human voices that no machine could ignore. Ryan approached Mira, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "The message is stronger now than it was before the fleet arrived." She nodded, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. "They will hear us, Commander. Not just the Varn, but everyone who listens. Our voice is everywhere. Across the system, the Varn Council had been thrown into chaos. The fleet's defeat and the growing human signal challenged their laws and beliefs. Some Varn began to question the judgment that had labeled humanity non-sapient. Others feared the consequences of ignoring a species that could now unite technology and emotion in ways they did not understand. In secret, scholar Reelan had preserved copies of the human signal. He shared fragments with other curious Varn scientists who had started to see the humans not as a primitive species, but as equals. For the first time, the Varn debated with empathy rather than authority. Back on Mars, the crew of Station 9 prepared to expand the signal even further. Every colony contributed what it could. Satellites, research outposts, even mining stations sent out small bursts of light and sound that carried the spark pulse into deep space. Each transmission included fragments of human culture, the shapes of Earth's mountains, the curves of rivers, the patterns of DNA, stories of invention, laughter and memory. Leo, the young pilot, watched the holographic map of transmitting nodes. "Commander, it's beautiful. It's like the entire solar system is singing." Ryan smiled. "It is more than singing, Leo. It is proof. Proof that we exist. Proof that we are human. Proof that they cannot erase us." The response from the Varn was slower now. Their ships had retreated to the edges of the system, but their machines continued to study the spark pulse. Small pulses of feedback traveled back toward Mars, curiosity encoded in tones and light. They were no longer hostile, at least not entirely. Some Varn began to adapt. Mira studied one of the signals that returned from the Varn. "Commander, this is remarkable," she said. "They are trying to replicate the patterns, but they are adding something new. It is almost collaborative." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "They are learning from us. Humanity is teaching them how to think in ways they never imagined." For the first time, the people of Mars felt the weight of history. The Council's attempt to deny their sapience had backfired. Humanity was no longer a species to be silenced. They were a voice rising across the stars. The colonies began to exchange messages more openly. Europa sent a series of light pulses that depicted the moon's icy caves. Lunabase added images of Earth, oceans, and forests. Titan transmitted signals that described frozen landscapes and chemical compositions. Every human world added pieces of itself to the growing chorus. In the main control room, Ryan stood before the crew, looking at the glowing network. "This is what it means to be human," he said. "To create, to connect, to stand even when others deny your worth. The spark pulse is our voice. It will be heard for generations to come." Mira turned toward him. "It is more than survival. We are telling the universe who we are, not what they expect." The moment was interrupted by an incoming transmission. The screen flickered and displayed the Varn response. It was brief but powerful. "We hear you." "You are not what we expected." Rian's voice rose with pride. "They finally see us. And this is only the beginning." Despite the victory, the crew knew that challenges remained. Not all Varn had accepted the message, and some would continue to resist understanding. But the signal had changed the balance. The humans had proven that intelligence was more than obedience, more than calculation. It was creativity, resilience, and the will to communicate across differences. The following days were filled with celebration, but also preparation. The Sparks worked to strengthen their relays, build additional transmitters, and expand the network beyond the solar system. The pulse that had begun on Mars now reached the outer Oort cloud, carried by a chain of satellites and repurposed drones. Children watched the glowing lights of communication towers and learned the rhythm of the spark pulse. Engineers shared stories of coding, design, and mathematics. Every human, no matter their age, became part of the movement. Rian walked across the red sands, looking up at the stars. He remembered Earth, the cradle of humanity. He thought of the billions who had once been silenced, and the colonies now rising with voices of their own. Humanity had been denied sapience, but that denial had only made them stronger. Mira joined him, carrying a small tablet showing the growing reach of the signal. "Commander, we've recorded transmissions from beyond Saturn's orbit. The message is expanding faster than we anticipated." Ryan smiled. "Then let it go further. Let the universe hear what it means to be human." In the quiet of the Martian night, the spark pulse spread across space, a wave of color, rhythm, and data that carried everything humans were. curiosity, compassion, resilience, and hope. Every relay, every satellite, and every colony amplified the pattern, making it impossible to ignore. And far beyond Mars, in deep space, the Varn observed. Their machines processed the signals, and some began to ask questions they had never asked before. What does it mean to be intelligent? Can emotion coexist with logic? Is unpredictability a flaw or a sign of life? The Council could no longer deny the truth. Humanity was more than they had ever imagined. The species they had labeled non-sapient had proven that intelligence is not measured by obedience, but by creativity, adaptation, and the courage to be heard. The Varn fleet remained at the edge of the solar system, not in defeat but in hesitation. They had seen something new, a species that could challenge not only their authority but also their understanding of the universe. Some ships sent small pulses back, hesitant attempts at communication. The spark pulse responded, carrying reassurance, not anger, and slowly building trust. Back on Mars, Ryan addressed the entire crew of Station 9. The holographic map of the solar system glowed with lines of signals stretching from Mars to the outer colonies. "We have survived their attack," he said. "We have proven our mind, our courage, and our creativity. But more importantly, we have sent our voice to the stars. Humanity will not be forgotten. We have struck back, and we will continue to rise." The crew cheered, not with the relief of safety alone, but with the joy of knowing they had achieved something monumental. They were no longer just survivors. They were the voice of a species that refused to be silenced. Mira looked at Ryan with pride. "We did more than defend ourselves. We reminded the galaxy what it means to be human." Ryan nodded. "And now, we ensure that no one can ever deny it again." The spark pulse continued to travel through space, a living monument of human intelligence. Every colony, every satellite, every hidden relay added to it. The signal carried data, art, music, and stories of survival. It was a testament to human creativity and perseverance. For the first time since the Council's judgment, humanity knew it was truly free. Their voice could not be silenced, their intelligence could not be denied, and their spirit could not be broken. From Mars to the outer worlds, humans sent and received messages. Every reply, every acknowledgement was a sign that the universe had begun to recognize them. Not all species understood immediately, but the truth could not be hidden forever. Ryan stood on the observation deck looking at the stars that now carried the pulse of his people. He felt a quiet pride, knowing that the work of the sparks had changed the course of human history. They had turned denial into proof, silence into song, and fear into courage. The night on Mars was calm. The red desert stretched endlessly, and the faint light of distant planets shone in the sky. Yet above the surface, the universe itself was alive with the sound and rhythm of humanity. The Varn had tried to deny them. The galaxy had tried to silence them. But humanity had risen, and its voice would echo for generations to come.